So thanks everyone for joining. I'm Autumn Crow. I'm the program director for West Virginia Rivers Coalition. And I'm here today to talk about how folks can comment on the Mountain Valley Pipeline. Again, because we've done this before, and hence us having this webinar on Groundhog Day. So for those of you that are unfamiliar with the Mountain Valley Pipeline, it was first proposed in 2014. They were rushing through the approval process of the permits. There were several permits that they needed for this 300-mile pipeline project that goes through West Virginia and Virginia. And so because they rushed through a lot of those approval processes, they wound up in federal court. The project is now 5 years behind schedule. It was first proposed to be completed in 2018. It's billions of dollars over budget. And according to their own reports that they submit to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, it's only about 50% of the route has been through final restoration. So there's several of their approvals that are currently pending. The Fish and Wildlife Service still has to issue their third biological opinion on the impacts to endangered species. And that process is currently underway, but there is no public comment opportunity for that document. What we have before us available for public comments is the U.S. Forest Service has issued a draft supplemental environmental impact statement. And that is currently available for public comment. So I'll go into a little bit more detail about how you can submit comments on that. And then the Army Corps of Engineers, who issues their permit, it's called a 404 permit, to cross streams and disturb wetlands. That permit, we've commented on that permit before, but currently out for comment is MVP's mitigation framework. So I'll also go over what's in their mitigation framework, where it falls short, and how to submit comments on that. So a little bit of background here. The Mountain Valley Pipeline is proposing to cross the Jefferson National Forest and the Appalachian Trail in Monroe County, West Virginia, and Giles County, Virginia. If you've been following this saga for over the past 8 or 9 years, the courts threw out previous approvals to cross the Jefferson National Forest in July of 2018 and January of 2022. This most recent, the most recent court case where they threw it out was because the sedimentation and erosion control analysis was flawed. They had prematurely approved stream borings and they failed to comply with the forest plan amendments. So when we're commenting to the Forest Service, and you'll see the link to comment in the chat. So when we're commenting to the U.S. Forest Service, we want to talk about their analysis of the effectiveness of Mountain Valley Pipeline's erosion control measures. Their analysis was severely flawed. First of all, they said that they assumed that Mountain Valley Pipeline, that their erosion control measures were going to be properly installed and adequately maintained. And they were assuming that the conditions were going to be normal. But we all know that the MVP does not install their erosion control methods properly. They are not adequately maintained. And we know this because the state agencies have cited them hundreds of times, both in Virginia and West Virginia. In West Virginia, our Department of Environmental Protection has cited them 250 times for erosion control failures, which have resulted in 50 water quality violations. And then the other thing is that, we are in the midst of a climate crisis. And so we do not have normal conditions anymore. We have very extreme weather events. We have these torrential downpours, and the Mountain Valley Pipeline is crossing some of the steepest terrain, mountainous terrain, with soils that are highly erodible. So these are not normal conditions. Their normal erosion control measures are ineffective, and the Forest Service cannot simply assume that MVP is going to maintain and install them properly, because we know that's not true. The other aspect that the draft supplemental environmental impact statement did not analyze MVP's contribution to climate change. They failed to consider the social cost of greenhouse gas emissions from the Mountain Valley Pipeline. So, all of the compressor stations along the route that are emitting methane, the cumulative impacts of installing this pipeline, and then the increased fracking that would result from it, those factors need to be considered in this environmental impact statement document. The other aspect where for the DEIS falls short is that the forest plan would require 11 separate amendments to accommodate this project. The Forest Service, they every 10 years they have this forest management plan that they are tasked with implementing, and they are very good stewards of our national forests. They have a lot of standards that are in place to protect and preserve all of the resources within these forests. So they have requirements like, you can't build on steep slopes, you can't disturb the soil where it's highly erodible with very steep slopes. You can't disturb vegetative buffers along streams, because these streams are some of our highest quality streams in our region. And so by making concessions for Mountain Valley Pipeline and making these amendments, they are basically sacrificing the health of our national forests to allow Mountain Valley Pipeline to cross it. So we need to tell the Forest Service that we do not want them to compromise forest health and water quality and make these special exceptions for the Mountain Valley Pipeline to cross the Jefferson National Forest. And then one final thing on this before we move into the Army Corps. So the Mountain Valley Pipeline would cross the Appalachian Trail. This is a national scenic trail. It stretches all the way from Georgia to Maine. And the Mountain Valley Pipeline crossing would degrade the scenic nature of the trail. You can see in this photo, this is a separate pipeline crossing, but this is an example of what view you would see from the Mountain Valley, from the Appalachian Trail, and how the right-of-way of the pipeline would impact the scenic quality. So the Bureau of Land Management is the agency that's responsible for authorizing crossing of that National Scenic Trail. And we, in our comments to the Forest Service, we need to say that they should not provide MVP with a right-of-way to cross the Appalachian Trail. So that's the Forest Service. We're going to move into the Army Corps of Engineers. And then after I'm just done discussing that, then we'll open it up for questions. So the Army Corps of Engineers is responsible for authorizing dredge and fill and in streams and wetlands crossed by the Mountain Valley Pipeline. There's 429 streams and wetlands that remain to be crossed by the Mountain Valley Pipeline.
Wow.
And so if you followed this saga for all these years, there's a very, their history of this stream crossing permit is just riddled with inconsistencies and flaws, and that opened them up to legal challenges. So they started out trying to use a general permit, a nationwide permit 12, to cover the entire project, thousands of streams and wetlands. And that the use of that permit was rejected by the courts in 2018 because there were special conditions within that permit that Mountain Valley Pipeline couldn't meet. So instead of at that time applying for an individual permit, they tried to change the conditions of the general permit. That didn't go very well for them. So when the Army Corps issued the new permit in 2020, we went back to court, and the courts put a hold on that permit pending review. So they knew that that would take a long time. So in 2021, they finally applied for that individual permit. And we've been commenting on that permit over the years as more supplemental information comes in. And so this current comment period is for their restoration plan that they've finally submitted for that permit. And it should come as no surprise, given Mountain Valley's track record, that the restoration plan will be ineffective in protecting all of the streams that they impact along the route. So there's a lot of flaws in that plan. I'm only going to cover some of them. But basically, the plan lays out their methods for determining whether the streams have been properly restored. And so one of those is annual monitoring for 3 years. So they would go out once a year for 3 years and say whether or not the stream has been restored. Well, this is insufficient. They need to go out more than once a year, and they need to go out for more than 3 years. But what they will find is that, you know, it's going to take a lot longer for the stream to recover. And so as they're going out in this annual monitoring, they have certain performance standards that they will be looking at. And some of those performance standards are things like the biological components of the benthic macroinvertebrates in the stream bed, and the chemical characteristics of the water quality, the conductivity, the dissolved oxygen, things like that. And they have arbitrarily set these standards without having any of them based on science. So they, for example, their conductivity standard would actually allow degradation to occur. And so they're setting standards where if they meet those standards, they have already allowed degradation to occur. So this is not acceptable. And then if their performance standards haven't been met, they'll simply just pay a fee saying, sorry, we've damaged this stream. We're gonna put some money into a mitigation fee program that the state runs. And that's simply unacceptable. Another aspect there where they fall short on is that you know, we've been asking them for years to establish the baseline conditions of the streams. You can't determine if a stream has been restored if you don't know the current quality of that stream. And so they went out and they attempted to establish baseline by taking one data point on select streams. Well, that's not sufficient in establishing baseline conditions on these streams. The other thing is that they're using a method that is actually underestimating the health of the stream. And so when they're doing their biological assessments, they're doing it in a way that would not adequately determine what the health of the stream is, because they're measuring the stream bugs to a family level where they needed to be measuring it to a genus level. And this creates problems because they're missing some of the populations of the aquatic bugs in the stream that are most sensitive to pollution. So their methodology is inaccurate. It's outdated. West Virginia has been using this method, and EPA has been asking them for 10 years to change their methodology. And so that's not going to establish baseline and determine the health of these streams. And then the other issue is that their benchmarks that they're using to determine impacts just have no scientific justification to them. So they've said, okay, if we're going out and doing biological assessments, and if that score is lowered 8 points, then we will consider it impaired. Well, there's no justification for that 8-point benchmark that they've thrown in there. And in fact, if it actually did fall 8 points, it would be more severely impaired than what they should be using. So and then the final thing that I'll touch on is their identification of sensitive aquatic areas. So the Army Corps of Engineers has this, they define riffle and pool complexes where, you have like rapids in the stream, little riffles where it creates dissolved oxygen for the fish. These are very important areas of the stream. And then you have the pool complexes where a lot of the fish live. So those are defined as very sensitive aquatic areas for our streams. And when you're applying for this permit, you need to show that you're avoiding those areas. And so Mountain Valley had gone out and tried to identify those sensitive areas and then show how they avoided them. Well, they determined their route before they even, went out and assessed all of these areas. So their identification of these sensitive areas is kind of guesswork. They use these forms and they don't even fill out the forms all the way, and they're lacking information, and there's no consistency from one site to another. So they're basically just, it's just guesswork. Whether or not they did a proper analysis to show that they fully avoided all of these sensitive areas. And we know that they haven't selected the least environmentally damaging alternative because some of the streams, they're crossing 56 trout streams, and one of those streams they're crossing 3 times within a mile. So, that certainly isn't the least environmentally damaging route for that particular stream. And in other areas, they're crossing 12 tributaries of a high quality trout stream. So we know that they don't have the least environmentally damaging route. So those are just, I know I went through that really fast. Those are just some of the issues that you should comment on. We've made it really easy for you to submit your comments. If you go to our webpage, wvrivers.org, on our homepage, you'll see the Mountain Valley Pipeline action alerts. You can contact the Forest Service. The comment deadline is February 6th. And for the Army Corps, the comment deadline is February 10th. So we encourage you all to submit your comments so that these federal agencies know that the public is not happy with Mountain Valley Pipeline, and we encourage them to deny their approvals so that we can lay this project to rest once and for all and protect our rivers and streams. If you're located along the route, we encourage you to download our StreamWatch app and report pollution from the Mountain Valley Pipeline. A lot of our analysis and our technical comments use all of those citizen reports to show the impacts of the Mountain Valley Pipeline. And then finally, we encourage you to be your river's advocate. You can write letters to the editor. You can post a video, take a video selfie of yourself along one of the impacted streams and post that just to raise awareness and help protect all of our rivers and streams. We have a newly hired MVP organizer, Tyler Cannon. So Tyler can drop his email in the chat. And if you want to get involved, reach out to him and he can get you plugged in. So with that, I will stop sharing and we'll open it up for comments.
Hello, Autumn,
Hi, Maureen.
and everybody. Autumn actually has asked if